Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, where industry leaders share insights on innovation with a focus on reducing cost and improving security for federal technology. If you like the Federal Tech Podcast, please support us by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcast.
Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. Today, we're going to talk about a survey that Mitre did, and it focused on federal chief data officers. And with us in the virtual studio is Nick Pesce. He's Senior Strategic Technology Advisor for Data Management, and Andrea Heithoff, Principal Architect for Data Management Innovation at Mitre, mitre.org. You can't forget the ORG on that one. So, Andrea, I'm just going to jump right in here, and I'm going to pick on you first. I got up this morning, and I fired up my little computer. I went to Google Trends, and I typed in Chief Data Officer. And then I compared it with artificial intelligence, and I had a nice little graph. And artificial intelligence, well, it's a hockey stick. We know that. But CEO's kind of flat, and it should be this. I think it should be the same. So why is the role of the CDO so important now?
Well, I think what we have found is that so much of that foundational work happening in a CDO organization is necessary to really enable how AI can be successful and more quickly achieved. One of the drivers for this survey was actually around the AI question. And I'm going to read this quote to make sure I get it right. It was from the National Security Commission on AI in March 2021. And they said, for the first time since World War II, America's technological predominance, the backbone of its economic and military power, is under threat. And they continued that the armed forces' competitive military technical advantage could be lost without accelerating the adoption of AI. So it's not just this, sudden surge of ChatGPT that's out there. There's a real need to figure out how the AI solutions can come in and help, but in a way that's going to be secure and trustworthy and reliable for informing decisions of anyone who's using data in our federal government.
Nick, I've been doing interviews for 15, 16 years now with govies and all kinds of people. And 10, 12 years ago, there was no CDO council. There was none of this. It was just like a dream somewhere. So where do you see this role of CDO is, Nick?
So 12, 15 years ago, we still had individual systems, and we were trying to figure out how to integrate them. So each system has its own data in it, correct? Today, we have gone from having databases to warehouses, and then we went to data lakes, and we're still growing. So we're trying to integrate all this data. CDOs are very important in order to make that happen. There's so much to it, which Andrea is going to talk about later about the back end, how important it is to build the back end for all this data management. It's significant. It's going to take a lot of money and budget, and it's not there. So these roles are very important. Analytics. How can you do analytics if you can't get to the data? So a lot of the systems today that you're aware of do specific things. But what happens in a situation when our adversaries do something different and we need to get the different data? That is not that easy today and takes a lot of manual effort. So the CDO's role is very important. It is the foundation for analytics and a lot of other things that we do.
So, Andrea, I'm a lot older than you. And in my early days, we talked about garbage in, garbage out. And now the youngsters, they say dirty data. It's the same thing, isn't it? I mean, if this artificial intelligence is going to make a decision on something, well, you can't have duplicate data. You can't have, data that's not complete. And so a lot of these problems I've seen in the past, but this is what the CDO really can maybe overview before they jump into artificial intelligence. Is that right, Andrea?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's kind of these four main elements when you have to use any of these data-oriented tools. You need the data, obviously, which needs to be complete and accurate. You need that business context of how it was created, who it can be shared with, why it was created in the first place. The people looking at it are going to need to have basic tools to analyze that data, and also the literacy to know that when they're looking at something, whether it's correct or giving them something completely off the wall. All of those come together to really give you that readiness to do the AI mining, to get rid of the dirty data and have something a little more palatable. And all of those elements are supported by our CDOs. It's that kind of boring back end to make sure that there is some kind of guardrail in place, whether that comes through governance or a policy, and not computational policy. Sometimes it's just the written policy that says what you can or cannot do. Having that community to bring people together to understand how their data might be used by someone else, and then to just make sure that there's some extra support for the more complicated questions. All of those aspects we found in our survey come together to make a CDO stronger and to ultimately prepare them to support AI solutioning in the future.
So, Nick, if we were in a courtroom, I'd lift my hand up here with this piece of paper and say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in front of me, I have a report from Mitre entitled Intelligence After Next, Federal Chief Data Officer Survey Analysis. I want to talk about this here. And if you're listening to this and it's the football season 6 months from now or something, you can go to mitre.com and download this. Very easy to find, Intelligence After Next. So, Nick, tell me what motivated you to put together this report.
That's a very good question, John. So the agency that requested this to be done was wondering where they should be within an organization, what roles and responsibilities they should have, what's working, what's not working. So they requested that we do a survey across other CDOs across the federal government. The majority of the surveys we did were IC, but we also did public agencies as well. So that was the reason for it, to figure out what's working, what's not working, how are others established, and what are their roles and responsibilities. So essentially, that was it.
When I looked at it, I said, I'd put this on my shelf if I was a CDO to some agency. I mean, what this does gives me a better idea of how I rank. And I think the categories are something like a model CDO, improving CDO, and a challenge. I'd be the challenge category, Andrea. Where would you be, Andrea?
Gosh, well, I've had a long career supporting a lot of different federal agencies. So I've been in all versions of that. And it was very informal in categorizing the different subjects that we talked to. But there were some clear boundaries between things where the CDO was clearly positive, having an impact. There were some folks that had all the right ideas, but were just struggling to get traction. And then there were some that had an idea, but just didn't have the pieces they needed to really make things happen, to move. They were a team of one. And so I always like to pretend I'm in that model CDO space to really know what to do. But so much of it is dependent on things like the authorities that have been granted, or just the support from leadership, the kind of staff that they're able to retain for government purposes, not like government employees, not strictly contractor support, and then ultimately budget. So those three pieces were the big challenges that we found make the truest discrimination between those three groups of CDOs.
Nick, I tell my kids I'm a real cool guy, and no one believes it. 2 days ago, the real cool guy, John Gilroy, I went to a data management conference from 8 in the morning till 6 at night. And I sat through all the different sessions, and I was taking notes, interviewing people. And I sat down with some people from the DLA, sat down with people from the Navy, and the Navy's got some pretty strong talent. These are 500 people at this conference. They were talking about something as boring as data management, Nick. And so I think it's something that has a lot of interest. And maybe that what was motivated this, because I think, Nick, you could have down with the box and stand up and say, hey, get what you would have been sold out, Nick. I mean, this is a topic that people are thinking about.
Yes, I believe that you're correct. But at the same time, we have a lot of people, you saw 500, but what about the thousands? There's a lot of the thousands that still think that they could get things done with analytics, MI, but they never realize where's the data. So, yes, you heard the 500. We also know that, and I mentioned this earlier, and the authority, we didn't mention training. That's the other thing. The culture in these agencies have to change towards how important data is and how to manage data, and to make sure it's accessible by other agencies or by other organizations that need it. That's still coming along, right? And then the other thing is, you heard a lot at that meeting about, I hope you heard a lot about the different applications that have to be built. You have to be able to tell, you were talking about earlier about dirty data. Well, you have to be able to track whether it's quality data. So someone looking at it can say, okay, this data is current because it has a date on it. It was just done yesterday and it came from a good source and I can use it for my analytics. There are hundreds of different aspects that have to be developed in order to get to where we want to go, where we can have secure, discoverable, and access data. It's going to take a long time to get there.
Seeing the agenda from the event that you went to yesterday, a lot of great stuff on there. And something that jumped out to me is how so many of the presentations talk about a very specific business case that had success with data. And I think that's where all of that work that Nick just described can be kind of focused with one business context at a time so that you don't have to tackle this all in one go. Have that consultation or service-oriented mindset to be able to look at things. And I think the expression is decision-driven data. You clean up your data based on the decision, and then you can eventually piece together a really great foundation across the board.
Well, Andrea, I'm going to get you in trouble here and have you maybe pick out a specific federal or industry CDO that you think are doing good jobs. I mean, obviously people at these conferences are speaking that had success. And what I learned at this conference was they didn't just walk into work one day at 9 o'clock in the morning, and a lot of them screwed up. They made this mistake and they had to back into this, and they learned, oh, this is this. And then, by the way, it's continuously changing. And so just because it worked last week, and so this is this stuff. So who's done a good job?
One of the things about our survey was that we did provide the commitment to anonymity. So I don't want to rat out anyone from our survey, good or bad. But there are some really great pockets in the community that are looking at creative ways for resource management, how to bring a data literacy program and elevate your workforce without having to hire new people. That's a really innovative idea that we heard through our survey interviews. There's also that consultation mindset. When they provide a service, it's kind of building a couple of different layers. When you start to clean up the data, people might realize that they can make better decisions. Then they start supporting those decision makers with some trusted tools and helping answer the hard questions. Now you start to get some influence then. So a CDO that's building from that, cleaning up the data, being creative at getting people to recognize the quality of data, and providing tools that endear trust. I think that's really the kind of magic formula that can help a CDO achieve some success across the board. It doesn't always have to be the super powered investment in data management. It can be a very targeted, creative application like we saw in just about every sector of the candidates we spoke to.
So, John, I'd like to add to that. And I'm going to give you a specific example without telling you the agency. All right.
Good.
And there was 2 agencies that were doing this, not one. So the one that impressed me the most is the one I'm going to talk about. And if they're online, they're going to figure out who it is. But this organization realized first that they're new, they have to become credible. At the same time, they were trying to make a difference quickly. So they did what Andrea was talking about. They started a hub and spoke environment where they had a lot of data scientists. They put them out in the business and mission organizations, right? So they were assigned to them. So they would help these organizations and gain credibility. But at the same time, they were able to identify what they had to do to standardize across all of them. How do we automate this? How do we automate that? And they were making a lot of progress. And I was really impressed with that one. Not only that, but they had the budget so they could buy the tools, the common tools that all have needed them. They all needed for analytics or for data catalog. So that was really impressive, but they weren't the only one. There were others. So that's the answer to that. So it's a little more specific.
Good. Andrea, this is a part of the podcast where we play Stump the Chump. So I'm going to try to stump you. On page 3 of your survey here, you talk about something called a CDO charter. Now, that may be very familiar with some people. Maybe you could explain this for the novices out there or the cool guys like me.
Sure. So a CDO charter is really that document that starts to codify what the job is going to be. And it's not something that is written in isolation. It is something that you have to work with your stakeholder organization or stakeholders to be able to come up with the agreed upon role that the CDO is going to play, and also the way that everyone else in the organization might relate to the CDO. So it can be roles, responsibilities, authorities, and a reporting structure that's necessary to achieve the objective.
You know, Nick, when I look at this survey, I'm at page 6 now. If you're playing along at home, I'm on page 6. And I spent some money last week, hired a graphic artist to do some pie charts for me. I love me some pie charts. And they talk about top strengths reported by CDOs. And guess what? Top weaknesses reported by CDOs. That's something I'm not going to report on. So, Nick, what did you do? Go down there and twist some arms? I mean, I want to tell you that I'm tall, tan, and terrific. I'm not going to tell you that I'm weak, sickly, and pasty or something, you know. So Nick, how'd you get them to admit some of their weaknesses? Must have been a challenge for you.
They trust Mitre. Okay.
That's it.
We're their right-hand man. So they trust us, and they know we would keep it confidential. So it's not attributional, as Andrea said in the beginning. And the other thing about those charts that's interesting is that on the strength side, you know, they talk about charter, data strategy, building a data implementation plan. You go to the other side, you see, well, they're the weaknesses as well. So it gives you an indication of, you know, what we're recommending makes sense. A lot of the things we're recommending are also the weaknesses for the challenged CDOs. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it did. I was looking at the chart, and what I noticed is that autonomy and authority is the top identified weakness here. And if you're in a federal organization, you know, this isn't Andrea's donut shop. I mean, the people work with some serious organizations here, and there's a certain limit to how much autonomy you can have, but does this just increase the potential for autonomy with individual organizations, Andrea, or where does this fit in the discussion?
Yeah, you know, one of the fundamental questions that we tried to get evidence to support one answer or the other is, who should a CDO report to? And the closer you can be to the executive or the agency leader is the longstanding advice that has been out there, but we wanted to really narrow in on that question. And so when we talk about having authority, having autonomy, it's really about being able to operate with limited interference in a way that ties back to mission support. And in some cases, when your CDO reports to a CIO, there are inevitably going to be some budget questions that the data just isn't going to win out when you've got a network that needs to be improved or when you're having some security concerns. And so the real issue of the autonomy is being able to have your budget, have your staff, and be able to address data questions as data questions, not as part of technology.
Nick, when you read all the buzz about artificial intelligence, there are some people that present it as, well, this is the end of the rainbow. This is great. You know, you don't have to hire new people. We'll make Nick 5 times as productive with artificial intelligence, you know. However, in your survey here, it talks about the CDO struggle to recruit skilled resources. And so is artificial intelligence well structured by a CDO? Is that a way to overcome some of these lack of skilled resources everyone seems to be facing?
I think that's a 2-prong answer. The first prong is these organizations still have to grow, and they still have to build all of these tools I was talking about. I have a slide on my computer that shows hundreds of different things that have to be built in order to make data management work, right? So you need the skills in-house to build a lot of those things because they're not all off the shelf. And even if they're off the shelf, you got to customize them. So that's number one. Number two, yes, the automation will save a lot of time. So we keep talking about speed of mission. Well, if the data cleansing, data preparation, data cataloging, data monitoring is all automated, then we can work at speed of mission. Right now, it could take months before you get access to data. So I think I answered that. So it's 2 prongs. The first one is in the data management organization itself, Yes, it has to have resources to do all this, to figure out how to build all this. And the other thing that we didn't mention is the newer CDOs coming online are looking into the technologies where the legacy ones were more governance and policy. The newer ones are now focusing also on what tools do I need and how do I get them and how do I connect them.
So, Andrea, on page 8 of your survey report here, one of your recommendations was helping organizations use data as a strategic asset. And 2 days ago, I sat down with a gentleman from the Navy, and he wanted to make data lethal. I said, lethal? Well, that's a pretty strong word, isn't it? He goes, no.
Yeah, it is interesting because I support an Army project. And
so you've heard that word then, huh?
Hearing, data is the new weapon is not unfamiliar. I think what it really comes down to is trying to find the ways that the information that is out there over all sorts of sensors, all sorts of intelligence gathering tools, trying to find a way to use that to make the most effective decisions. And especially in that DoD space, the kinds of timing of decisions are very critical. And in some areas of the world, it's very difficult to have a complete picture. You don't have the luxury of sitting back, having a beautiful model, having it cleaned up. You need to have good data right away and trust in the systems like an AI model to be able to give you a reliable, COA, course of action recommendation. The human is still in the decision. I don't think anyone would argue that it's going to be some kind of, future of AI running the military, but there needs to be that tool, which is what all of these government CDOs are probably looking for, a tool of AI to make all of those technical decisions easier to come to.
So, Nick, earlier I was facetious, talked about Andrea's donuts. And now if Andrea does have a donut shop, she's going to ask customers, what do you want? What do you want? Chocolate donuts? You want maple? What do you want? You want sprinkles? And she's going to make a bunch of those. Okay. So she listens to her stakeholders. So in this report, we talk about stakeholder engagement. So Nick, so the stakeholders from the CDOs, they have to listen to everyone and reflect, or so what stakeholders are you talking about?
So there's multiple levels of stakeholders, and there is a pyramid in this document that reflects that, starting from the top executives all the way down to the users. And also they set up different boards to meet with these various type of people. I believe it's in that document. I have a detailed document. I'm sorry. There's 2 documents, John. There's the document that the government has, which is over 30 pages, and then there is the summarized paper that is published in public, which is the one you're reading. So there are multiple levels across the organization. There's meetings with the CDOs, there's meeting with these data stewards, there's meeting with the users, and all of this is needed in order to develop policies, to get a direction that's specific to your organization.
Good. So, Andrea, I'm going to put you on a train here. So you're in a train heading out to Dulles Airport, and someone is crazy looking as me sitting next to you, and I happen to be a CDO at an agency, and so you got 10 minutes to give me some advice, give me some suggestions. So give me a couple takeaways. If you just have a few minutes, maybe in the next a 2-minute drill or something on
Sure.
advice you would give to understand a little bit about the survey, maybe recommendations.
Yeah. So if I've got one more stop on Mitre to answer that question.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to the layering. If the very first thing you do is figure out how to increase your budget, your staff, and your authority, just having that support starts to set you up for the next level of success, which is figuring out how to build a community. And that's that stakeholder engagement Nick just described. But it can also be around some of the technical questions and the literacy of your workforce. Literacy can be the way to start recruiting into your own ranks, or as Nick had mentioned earlier, putting SMEs into the organization on your behalf. Those are your sort of quick and easy, cheap moves until you get your sufficient budget to start investing in the technologies and the real hard work that comes with things like data tagging, the quality management, the metadata management, cataloging, understanding the entirety of your data asset library, so that you can then start using your more advanced technology to find those pieces of data, to clean it up so that you can start applying those AI models in the ways that the business most needs, so that now you've essentially freed up the time of your experts that know the business, so they can actually focus on the business and not focus on cleaning up data all the time. It all comes back to having the money to invest in the base tools and technologies to make the rest of it all happen.
So if I only have one train stop, I would say, if you're government, I would say contact Mitre and they'll send you the detailed report. And they also give you a how-to book, because we have a book that's a complete, detailed how to set up a CDO organization.
Yeah, and the way they can reach us, we have an email, datamanagement@mitre.org. We also have a website, cdo.mitre.org. And that is a place that if you are a government employee, you can create an account and start to look at some of the additional resources we have available. And then the final plug, just as we're leaving our train, is that Mitre hosts a CDO summit every October. And so information will be coming soon about how CDOs and other data program folks may want to sign up and even present at this event coming in October.
And you know why it's important? There's so much going on now with artificial intelligence. I mean, can you do the agenda now for, I don't know. I'd probably wait till late September before you get that little pencil on a piece of paper and bring a big eraser, because it's shifting. I mean, 2 days ago at this data conference I was at, they're talking about data models, and they were this is how we do it now. He was like looking at his watch going, now this is how we do it. And I think an organization like yours is what Nick said, they got trust. And so you're not going to be, let's say, biased with a certain company or an approach or
exactly.
And so what you could look, there's apples, there's oranges, there's grapes. Okay. You can't make wine with apples. Okay. I mean, you're going to be pretty objective about what's out there. And I have to admit that there's some presentations that I saw that might have, maybe looked favorably on one organization, but I see no organization in this white paper. I see nothing here. I see surveys, questions, answers, how to get better. This is unbiased, I think, and I think this is one of the strengths that Mitre has for many years now.
Yeah, I think that's that role of the FFRDC, Federally Funded Research and Development Center. We operate a number of FFRDCs for the government, and it is that unbiased advice that we try to bring to every single project.
And if you're listening to this, you're walking your dog, you're jogging, I will put this in the show notes. So that's been a great interview. You have been listening to the Federal Tech Podcast with John Gilroy. I'd like to thank my guest, Nick Pesce, Senior Strategic Technology Advisor, Data Management, and Andrea Heithoff, Principal Architect for Data Management Innovation at Mitre, MITRE.org.
Thanks for listening to the Federal Tech Podcast. If you like the Federal Tech Podcast, please support us by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts.